Paige Ruth Pritchard is Natural Resource Specialist with the Texas Optimization Program and Response Team in the Emergency Preparedness and Response section. Paige has a BS in Environmental Science with a minor in Sociology from Lamar University in Beaumont. Paige started with TCEQ in 2015 as a public drinking water investigator in the Beaumont Regional Office. She joined the Toppert in 2022 and has been working with water systems in the coastal and East Texas regions. Please welcome Paige Ruth Pritchard.
All right, we're going to jump right into this so that I can meet the 45-minute mark. All right, so why do you have inspections from the TCEQ? So the EPA mandates that TCEQ conduct sanitary surveys every 3 years for community systems and every 5 years for non-community systems. You will have an investigator come out. They'll call them a comprehensive compliance investigation, or a CCI. And what they're going to do is they're going to present you with the list of records, which we're going to go over here in a minute. And you'll just have those available for them whenever they come. And they will also look at your water treatment plants. So one of the first records that they're going to look at and ask you for is your general plant information. They're going to want to know your emergency contact information, responsible party, how many pressure planes your system has, your population and connection counts, and if for whatever reason you need to update this information on Drinking Water Watch before your CCI, you can always contact PWS InVen and they can make those changes for you. Okay, the next record that you're going to need to keep is purchase water and wholesale water contracts. So if you are a purchase water or a wholesaler, you need to have those contracts available. One of the common mistakes we'll see with these is that they have expired for the amount of time that you said you were going to supply water. So make sure that you do have signatures up to date and everything for those. All right, operator notice forms. So this is going to be a list of everyone employed by your water system, all of your operators. It's also going to include your operators in training. So if you have any of those, these need to be on that form. You're going to submit this yearly to PWS InVen as well. Common mistakes that we see whenever with this form is that you didn't turn in the form annually. That's a big one. And that you didn't include operators in training. The next thing that you're going to need to have available for your inspection is any exceptions or alternative capacity requirements that you have. Those need to be available to the investigator. If you don't know if you have any, you can always call your regional office and ask them to submit copies to you. They should be able to do that. If you need to apply for an exception before the CCI, you can always reach out to PTRS. That's where you're going to apply for your exceptions or ACRs. The next record that you're going to keep is your monthly operating reports, or the MORs. These are going to include three things. So it's going to be the volume of water that you treated and distributed, the amount of chemicals, and your disinfectant residual monitoring records. And whether those are daily or weekly or every 7 days are dependent upon your connections and population. So for the volume of water and the amount of chemicals, if you have greater than 250 connections or 700 people, that is a daily. If you have less than 250 connections or 750 people, that is a weekly record that you're going to have to keep. The difference is with the disinfectant residual records. So the other ones say weekly. These are every 7 days. So 7 days from whenever you collected your last distribution sample till the next one, we do count that as investigators. So that's the difference there. And you will need to keep these records for 3 years. This is what that log sheet can look like. We have examples of them. A great document on our website is this compliance notebook. You can just go to tceq.com and type in compliance notebook, and you can get it for GUI systems, surface water, groundwater, purchase water systems, and they will have these pre-made record sheets that you can use. All right, so common mistakes that we would see on your monthly operating reports. That you're recording the amount of water used once a month instead of a weekly or daily, not recording the amount of chemicals used, not recording how many bottles of chemicals you added to your reservoir, and monitoring the disinfectant residual once per week versus once every 7 days. So as we go through, I do have some pictures and stuff that I will ask, is this compliant? Usually whenever I'm giving this to a class, there will be participation, but not today because we have to go through this. So I'm gonna ask this question and then I'll give y'all the answer. So is this compliant? No, it is not. We don't know what any of the numbers mean, so therefore it is hard to determine compliance. So how could we make it compliant? So if you did want to use a calendar like this, you would need to include, a disinfectant residual, how much water you treated, stuff like that on each day or each week. And that would make this a compliant record that you could keep. What about this one? So is this one compliant? So if we look over there, we can see that they are recording the volume of water used. They are recording how much chemicals they're using. And then on a separate sheet over here, they are recording their daily disinfectant residuals. So yes, it is compliant, and it doesn't matter if you have them on 2 separate forms. You can keep these records separately if you want to. Okay, so flushing records is the next thing you're gonna need to have. So all dead-end mains need to be flushed on a monthly basis. Some other data that you can collect is your length of flushing, the volume of water, and your beginning and ending residuals so that you have flushed out old water and brought in new water. And you need to keep your flushing records at least 2 years. The main thing that we're gonna look for is that you have a location that you have done the flushing at and the date. And the date is important for whenever your investigators have complaints. So we'll get a complainant that'll say, this water operator has not flushed at my location in a year. And we can look at your flushing logs and say, well, actually, they have flushed here at this location on this date for the past year. So keeping your date is very important. All right, so common mistakes that we would see with flushing logs: not having a flushing log whenever you have dead-end mains. So if you have dead-end mains, you have to maintain a flushing log. Also, if you're going out to flush for complaints, it is also good to add those to your flushing log as well. The dates of dead-end mains must be recorded. That's a very common thing that we would not see. And then dead-end flushing records not matching your distribution dead ends. So a lot of investigators, they'll pull up your flushing records and they'll pull up your distribution map and they'll look and say, okay, find me location number 5 on your map. So you need to make sure that your map is up to date with your dead-end flushing logs. Okay, so flushing logs, which one is compliant? The one over here is the compliant one. They have the date, they have the location, they have if it was a dead end. They're also recording residuals and stuff like that. This one over here is not compliant. So they just have like how much they flushed. You don't have a location, you don't have a date. So they would need to provide that in order for that record to be compliant. All right, the next record you're gonna need to have is the RTCR form. So this is gonna be your BAC-T locations, and you will need to have a map associated with this showing your BAC-T locations and your connections that you pick to do your repeats at within 5 connections upstream or 5 connections downstream. Those will also need to be included on this. And you need to keep your BAC-T records for at least 5 years. Common mistakes we've seen: not having a plan is a big one. Nowadays, it's more so that, they can't find the record or someone ran off with the record and they no longer have it. So that is a big one that we'll see, is not having a plan. Another one that is pretty common is not rotating through the sample sites. So if you're only taking bacteriological samples in one section of your distribution, you're not actually seeing what's in the other areas. So you need to rotate through. Like, you pick those sites for a reason, go ahead and make sure you're rotating through them. Not having a map associated with the plan, and this is also supposed to be connected to your monitoring plan. So a lot of times we'll look for that too. And then this one is a big one: not having a licensed operator collecting bacteriological samples. You need to have a licensed individual collecting your BAC-Ts. If your investigator does go out there and find that, that's an automatic field site for the person collecting that, and then automatic enforcement for your system. All right, monitoring plans is the next record. So you are required to maintain a chemical and microbial monitoring plan, and it is required to be updated as needed, and it must be kept for forever. So typically it would only need to be updated when something has changed. Mostly whenever we see this, it's gonna be Sampling addresses are new water system owners, adding new plants, adding new pressure tanks, ground storage tanks, stuff like that. And again, the sample siting plan needs to be attached to your monitoring plan. The TCEQ investigator will look at it for compliance during the CCI, and your TCEQ sampling contractor should also look at it when they are collecting your chemical samples. Okay, so this mobile home one, I don't think we have anymore, but we used to have a mobile home monitoring plan. The other one is the one that you're gonna find on our website now. So if you are needing to come up with a monitoring plan, it's a very easy document. You can go in there and essentially just click and add in what pertains to your system, and then you will have created a monitoring plan for yourself. Common mistakes that we would see with the monitoring plan. So not updating the information in the monitoring plan when there are changes, not providing a plant schematic, so you need to have your plant schematic included in there with the entry point included on that. Not including your sampling method and compliance calculations for all samples. Not noting your laboratory facilities that you use to analyze samples or the equipment that you use to analyze samples. Not identifying compliance methods used, and then not including the sample siting plan, lead and copper sites, or your lab approval form with this document. So some of the sections that you're gonna see, you're gonna have to have addresses for each of your sample sites has to be included in this, or the location has to be included on a distribution system map that's attached. Most people are gonna use the sample sites, they don't use a map. And then another thing you're gonna see for each section, for all the samples that you collect, you're gonna have a frequency. So how often are you doing that samples? Is it every day? Is it weekly? Every 3 years? Every year? The location, so that's where you would add in this sample site list. And then the method that you're using. Are you sending it off to a laboratory to be sampled? Are you using like DR300 or SL1000 to do the samples? You would put that method there. And then the compliance section is going to be, it'll say for free chlorine, like we are within compliance with the free chlorine standard if we have above a 0.2 milligrams per liter, something like that. So this is the laboratory approval form. You can find them on our website. You will need to fill them out with the analytical methods that you're using and instruments and add that to your monitoring plan. It can also be found in the compliance notebook that I was telling y'all about. We kind of already went over the sample siting plan, but this is what it looks like, and it also needs to be included. Okay, distribution system maps. So you have to have an accurate and up-to-date map of your distribution system. That includes your valves and mains that can be easily located during emergencies. And it must be maintained and updated for the life of the water system. So these are very common mistakes that we see with distribution system maps. Number one, the map is outdated. Whenever you make changes in the distribution system, it's not being updated. So say you looped a line or something like that, you need to update that on your distribution system map. This one is a real big one. New construction of subdivisions. So we have a lot of people moving to Texas, right? So there's a lot of subdivisions coming in, and a lot of times those are not updated on the distribution system map. So if you have a new subdivision or something going in, make sure you're updating your distribution system map before your CCI. And then not identifying the valves on the map. So I don't know if y'all can see this, but this is this compliant question for this map? And yes, it is. They did include, they have the lines color-coded, they have the mains included, they even have the well site on there, they have their flush valves and isolation valves included as well. Public notice records. So during your CCI, you will need to have your public notice records available for the investigator to look over. So any boil water notices that you have done in the last 3 years, any public notice that you've made, have those available for them. Tank inspection forms. So all ground storage and pressure tanks must be inspected annually. If you have a pressure tank that has an inspection port, the interior surface must be inspected every 5 years, and the records have to be kept for 5 years. So the 5 years is there because if you have a pressure tank, we want to be able to see that you did it 5 years ago, the interior of it. Each tank inspection has to have its own form. So if you have 2 ground storage tanks, 2 pressure tanks, you have to have 4 forms. You can't just say, I looked at both of these on the same form. And this is something that some people don't know. Your tank inspections can actually be done by water system personnel, or you can also contract an inspection service. But it means that you can do it if you need to. That pressure tank was leaking and someone tapped a screw into the bottom of it. Fun photo, yeah. Okay, so common mistakes that we would see on your tank inspection forms. So completing the ground storage tank and pressure tank inspections on the same form, you need to use a separate form for each tank. Not identifying the tank on the form if they are the same size and at the same location. So say you have 2 50,000-gallon ground storage tanks, you need to identify them as tank 1, tank 2, south tank, north tank, however you want to do that. You can't just put the 50,000 ground storage tank if you have more than one. Not inspecting the pressure tank with an inspection port internally once every 5 years, and then not conducting internal inspections annually on ground and elevated storage tanks. This one on this side closest to me, that is the form, and the one over here is is it compliant or is it not compliant? And I don't know if you can see that, but it is not compliant. So there's no information on the exterior of the pressure tank. You didn't click any boxes. And then also it shows 3 pressure tanks on this one form. So again, 1 tank, 1 form, so they can't just add them all onto here. All right, another record that you're gonna need to keep is your well completion information. Your investigators usually want to look at this, and sanitary control easements. So your sanitary control easements for all 150 feet radius around your wells, you need to have that available. If you had plugged any wells since your last CCI, you will need to have that available. And any exceptions, which we already talked about that earlier, but you can put, a lot of operators will put the well completion information, sanitary control easements, and the exception for a well all together. ANSI, NSF certification for all chemicals used. So any chemical that you use in your drinking water system, it needs to be NSF certified. So you have to keep these certifications for as long as you use the chemical or media at your system. So if you have a iron and manganese filter or something like that, the media that you use in that, you have to have NSF certification for that as well. Cross-connection control program is another thing that your investigator is definitely going to look at. So this is going to include, whenever we say cross-connection control program, it is your backflow protection assemblies, your CSIs that you conduct, and then your customer service agreements or like an ordinance or something for the city. In your cross-connection control program, you must have one of the following. You can either have ordinances, you can have plumbing or cross-connection regulations, or customer service agreements. Most water systems in my region of the state have customer service agreements. And the customer service agreements must be kept for as long as the resident lives at that location. If you are lacking in your cross-connection control program, or if you want any type of training on this, we do offer directed assistance modules, and you can reach out to Catherine McLaughlin down here to schedule that for you. All right, customer service agreements. So what we're gonna look for is that it has a right of entry. You need to have a right of entry so that you can go into their home if you need to look for cross connections. It has to have a lead ban. We have federal standards for the percentage of lead that they can have. And then internal protections. And then the big one is it needs an enforcement clause, because without that, if you do have someone that has a cross connection, you do not have any teeth to make them do what you want them to do. All right, so some common mistakes that we would see is not having the enforcement clause, not having language regarding the lead ban, not providing the provision that allows you entry onto their home to check for cross connections. And then the last one I have seen, not having a customer signature on the form. So they filled it out, but then they didn't sign it at the bottom. So you definitely need to make sure that, you know, whoever is handing these out whenever you have a new tap, that it is actually getting signed. Okay, so is this compliant? So we do have a no direct connection, we have a right of entry, and we also have an enforcement. So yes, this would be considered compliant. However, I did have an operator point out to me the last time I gave this class, he said, there is not a signature, and he was correct. So no signature, you know. All right, is this one compliant? So that is going to be a no. All it has is just, where the people live, what their name is, but it doesn't give you any right of entry. It doesn't say no direct connection with cross connections, nothing like that. No lead ban. All right, customer service inspection forms. So you should be doing CSIs with any new construction that you're supplying water to in your system. Any existing service where contamination hazards are expected, or anyone that's doing like a material improvement or an expansion of their facilities, such as like a kitchen or a bathroom, you should be doing CSIs on those. And CSIs can only be conducted by customer service inspectors, plumbing inspectors, or water supply protection specialists licensed by the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. They would have this stamp on their license. So common mistakes that we would see with this is that you're using an outdated form. This form did come out in 2017, but I still do see some forms that are older being used. So outdated form, not having a licensed individual conduct the investigation, that is something that you need to have a licensed person doing these CSIs. Not using a form that has the correct lead percentages in it. So make sure that whatever form you're using has that. All right, so is this one compliant? So yes, it is. It is the current CSI form. Again, that same operator was like, well, it's not filled out. It doesn't have a signature, so he would be correct. But for our purposes, yes, this is a correct CSI form, and it is compliant. All right, backflow test forms. This is something that your investigators are probably going to look at, since the last time they came. So the last 3 years of records that you'll need to have for each of your locations that you have a backflow at. And that they're just going to try to make sure that you are doing them annually like you're supposed to. So some common mistakes that we would see is using an outdated BPAT form, using a form that deviates from TCEQ's form. So you cannot change anything to this. So say you wanted to add a comment section at the bottom, or you wanted to add something to the top of the form, you shouldn't be changing the form without approval from our cross-connection control person. The test gauge accuracy is out of date. So they have a test gauge that they use whenever they do these, and they have to be tested annually for accuracy. So it has to be within a year of the test date. So whenever you get these backflow forms back from the backflow inspector, make sure that that date is within a year. That's a very common thing that we find. And then not keeping the original form. You paid them for a service to do the backflow, so you need the original form whenever we come out, not a copy of it or anything like that. So you should have the original form. It's best practice. Okay, so which one is compliant? This one is compliant. It is the most up-to-date form. It has all important information, and the gauge has been verified within a year of the test date. No, this one is not. It's an older form, and if you look, the calibration date of the gauge is 3 years out of date from the time of the inspection. All right, plant operations and maintenance manual. It's essentially like your standard operating procedures. How this should be written is if you were to get sick or something like that and someone need to operate your plant, they should be able to walk in, pick up this document, and know exactly what you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. They should know, how to turn stuff off, what to do, what samples to collect. That should all be in here. Some new things that were added last year that you need to update in your operations manual is you need to identify your critical plant equipment and planned protection during adverse weather conditions. You have to identify all water treatment chemicals and chemical vendors. And you have to have SOPs included in there for chemical feed rate verification, how you do your dose adjustments, calibration, how you do emergency startup and shutdowns, and you have to have copies of the links of the manufacturer's specifications. All right, so here's an example of a plant operations and maintenance manual. We do have examples online on TCEQ that you can find. So some common mistakes that we would see is forgetting to include the emergency contact information, not providing enough detail with your routine maintenance activities, and then not updating when there are changes such as new wells, switch and disinfectant, new generators, stuff like that. Are these compliant? So yes, kind of. So we would need more procedures for this one, but it is an okay plant operations and maintenance manual. All right, no. It is missing the emergency contact information, and also I would like to see it more filled out, more meat and potatoes in the descriptions. All right, drought contingency plans. This is another record that they are gonna look at. So if you serve more than 3,300 people, you have to send a copy of your plan to TCEQ. And you do need to keep a copy of this with your records permanently, and you're supposed to update it every 5 years. So how you could update that is you would bring it to your city council meeting. You'd say, do we still want to use this drought contingency plan? Read over it with everyone, put the date at the top. Yes, it is updated. We have reviewed it. This is still what we wish to do. Common mistakes, not updated every 5 years, and not sent to Austin if you're over 3,300 connections. And then sometimes I'll see them where they don't include a public education section or an enforcement contingency, which you definitely need in the drought contingency plan. All right, customer complaint records. So you need to keep these for at least 2 years. They should have the date which you can receive the complaint, the location, what the complaint was about, and then also what you did to correct that complaint. So you got a dirty water complaint, you went out, you flushed. You need to record, what you did as a resolution. So common mistakes that we would find is not recording customer complaints. A lot of times we would see this on the weekends whenever the operator has the emergency phone and it's not going to a city secretary, and y'all are super busy trying to repair leaks and do everything else, and the complaints are just not getting written down. So make sure you keep a log in your truck or something to record those when they come in. Not recording the resolutions taken, so we definitely need to know what you did to address that complaint. And then not recording the date or the location of the complaint. All right, EPPs. Your investigators will look at this whenever they come out. You do need to have one. This is just if you have any questions, you can contact the EPP team. But just know that you do need to keep your EPP in your records because your investigator will want to look at it now. All right, this one's new. So emergency generator checklist. So this checklist is for systems serving less than 1,000 connections. If you serve more than 1,000 connections, you are required to conduct generator testing and maintenance according to the National Protection and Fire Association. Our rule on that, I think, is 29046M8. And this is a guidance document, so this form and everything is in a guidance document. You can just go to tceq.com and put in emergency generator checklist, and it will pull it up, and you can read through it and figure out what you need to do for your system. Okay, flow meter calibrations. So well meters are calibrated at least once every 3 years. You have to keep that verification and calibration records for 3 years. For surface water treatment plants, your flow meters are every year. And so you will need to keep those again for 3 years. You're gonna need to do calibrations on your raw water meter, your treated water, backwash, and your recycle or decant water meter. So common mistakes that we would see is that it's not calibrated on a yearly basis for surface water or 3 years for groundwater systems. One of the things that we have is that they need to be within plus or minus 5% of the calibration, or that you don't have any records on site for any of the meters. Verification of colorimeters. So the accuracy of manual disinfectant analyzers has to be verified at least once every 90 days using a chlorine solution of known concentration. So this will be your gel cells that you would use. So if your colorimeter has a low range and high range, you'll need standards for low range and for high range. You must keep these records at least 3 years. If you use a color comparator or a color wheel, you just have to make sure that it's not faded, dirty. You have to keep it out of the sunlight. I know most people that use those will replace them pretty regularly so that they don't get faded or dirty. Common mistakes that we would see on the verification forms, the PWS is not verifying the colorimeter and there are no records available. Verifying only in low range or high range when both are required to be verified to ensure that the colorimeter will still be in compliance. This one's a big one, using expired standards and not verifying that they are still in compliance. Okay, so that compliance notebook that I was telling y'all about, it has a really great verification log sheet. It's awesome. So if you don't already have one or if you're struggling with your verification sheets, go in there and pull this one and start using it. So this one over here is is it compliant or not question. So yes, it is compliant. It has the date, the results, the standard values, and what range was measured. Again, same operator that got onto me for the signing of them, he said, well, if they marked those out, they need to put their initials next to them. So, all right. So how we could improve it is we could add in the lot number for the secondary standards and the expiration date. That's my dog. This is a picture. I'd only been with the agency like 3 days, and I got a call, and they were like, the elevated storage tank exploded. What do we do? And I had no idea, so I had to call the city and be like, what's happening? And they were like, oh, it's fine. Lightning struck, and our overflow is just constantly filling, not stopping, but it's fine. So, but yeah, I was like, oh no. So, yeah, that's it. Any questions? Oh, we got a bunch. Okay.
So on the customer service inspections, you were talking about, he said, well, it wasn't some. So do you want every customer service inspection? I usually just, nobody's ever said anything. I just have the example of one, and I tell them where we keep them in the vault
So
with the customer records. We don't keep them separate.
So usually during an inspection, I would just ask for any new construction that you've had within the last year, and that's what I would look at.
So I would just make copies, because I don't usually pull that out of the.
You could do that as long as you have them.
And you said that about the no copies on the BPAT, but we don't do those inspections. Somebody else, and I don't pay for them either. The customer pays for them, and they give me
And
a
they
copy.
send them to you?
Yeah, I usually
As long
get
as
them by
everything's
email.
on there and it's legible,
Oh, yeah.
you should be
Okay.
fine. A lot of times whenever you get copies in, some of the numbers can't be seen, so that's why we like the originals.
We have 3 virtual questions that came in.
Ooh, okay.
On the distribution maps, does all the information have to be on one map? Can you have one map for flush valves, one map for lines, etc.?
As long as you can read it and your investigators know, like, hey, okay, this is your lines, this is your flush valves and stuff, you just need to tell them, that should be fine.
Do you need to have a water license to flush the distribution system?
No.
Do I need drought codependency plan for 17 mobile home trailers? 17 is capacity.
I don't
never full.
think that mobile homes need drought contingency plans.
Concerning mapping, is digital mapping now accepted, or do you have to have a actual physical copy?
You can have digital maps as long as your investigator can look at it during the inspection. So if we want, like I was saying with the flush valves, the dead ends, if I say, hey, where's this dead end, you should be able to show me on the digital map. Or if we get a complaint that says, hey, there's a water leak at this area, or they looped a line here and I want to see like what the lines actually look like, line size and everything, that should be included as well in your digital map. All right, no more? We're good? Thank y'all.
All right, thank you very much, Paige. That does conclude the 2025 PDW conference. Thank you all for coming. Get home safe, and we hope to see you next year.